Good afternoon, America. I'm Ron Burgundy.
And I'm Veronica Corningstone.
And this is the 70s in 70 seconds. The 10-year reign of the Beatles has ended with the split of the popular group.
Palestinians have hijacked 4 planes bound for New York and have taken 310 hostages.
The Pentagon Papers have just been released, proving that the government lied to the people.
Sony has created the first video cassette, the Sony U-matic, which can play up to 60 minutes of film.
Richard Nixon has been discovered to be involved in a scandal involving wiretapping and stealing from the National Democratic headquarters.
There has been an attack on the Summer Olympic Games as 11 Israeli athletes were taken hostages and killed.
The Roe v. Wade decision has overturned Texas law that outlawed abortions.
The U.S. has been pulling out troops. The United States has began pulling out troops of Vietnam.
Ted Bundy, serial killer, has started his string of about 36 murders.
Richard Nixon has resigned.
Saturday Night Live aired for the first time.
U.S. President Ford escapes 2 different assassination attempts, 17 days apart.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is experiencing the first outbreak of Ebola. The outbreak will result in 218 deaths.
The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the death penalty is not cruel punishment and can be used.
Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Darth Vader, and the Star Wars saga has begun.
The Nuclear Proliferation Act was signed by 15 different countries, including the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Pope John Paul dies after only 34 days in office.
Jim Jones followers have committed mass suicide in Jonestown, Guyana.
Sugar Hill Gang's popular song, Rapper's Delight, has brought rap from the New York streets into the popular music scene.
Carter and Brezhnev have signed the SALT II agreement.
Thank you, and we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Fettuccine. Rigatoni. Fettuccine. In this family, we take loyalty very seriously. But rigatoni! No! It's not a personal matter. It's strictly business. Now you're gonna make sure that I never see you again. Or I'm gonna make sure that no one does.
I'm Champ Bailey, and these are the top 3 sports highlights of the 70s. 1973, the Secretariat won the Triple Crown.
Whammy! Whammy!
Sugar Ray Leonard defeats Wilfred Benitez to claim the welterweight belt.
Whammy! 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 Whammy!
Julius Erving, also known as Dr. J, made famous the nasty cradle dunk.
Whammy! Whammy! Whammy!
Today's sports highlights have been brought to you by Charlie's Angels. Good afternoon, Brick. How are you?
I'm doing pretty swell. How are you?
Good to see you. Good to see you. I see here that you have recently earned your doctorate.
Yeah, I got a doctorate in cultural history with an emphasis in the 70s, along with a minor in oceanography, also with an emphasis in the 70s.
Now, Dr. Brick, what would you say the popular culture of today's society reflects the values of us, the people of the 70s?
Wow, great question, Colin. You know, I'd say in the 70s, it really showed a distrust in the government from things like the Pentagon Papers, the Kent State, the Jackson State affairs. I really think that the people really expressed their distrust in the government by making a breakaway culture. You saw things like disco, the crazy afros, you know, the crazy dress that they all had, and I really think that expressed, you know, like their distrust in the government.
Now, Dr. Tamlin, comparing our decade to the decade that came before us, the 60s, how would you say we are different?
You know, I'd say the biggest difference between the 60s and the 70s would probably have to be the distrust in the government.
How so?
I'd say, I mean, if you just look at the history, I mean, the Pentagon Papers, the Watergate scandal, I think people really became to be suspicious of the government and what they were actually doing.
And so, would you say there's any similarities between the 60s and the 70s?
Oh, yes, most definitely. I would say the Cold War was a very big similarity between the 60s and 70s. I'd say that the democratic and communist governments in the world still had major issues. You can see this through the Vietnam War, which spanned the 60s and the 70s. And they had a lot of tensions, even through the space race and the nuclear arms race. I think that was a really big deal in the 60s and 70s.
Hello, ladies. I am the ideal 70s guy. I mean, just look at these pants. And I only wear Frolicking Panther. Because 60% of the time, it works every time.
We have Ron Burgundy here. How's it going, Ron?
Hey, Brick.
So, I hear that you have a degree, a doctorate. What is that
I
in?
just earned my doctorate in song analyzation with an emphasis in the 70s.
And do you have any minor?
I do have a minor in zoology with an emphasis in the 70s. I quickly learned in my studies that zoology is not the study of zoos, but I did learn a lot about animals in the 70s.
So, Ron, being an expert and all, what song would you say best represents the 70s?
Well, Brick, funny that you asked, because I just did my dissertation over the song Staying Alive by the Bee Gees and how it reflects the culture of the 70s.
How does the song Staying Alive represent the society during the 70s?
Well, Brick, disco as a culture was strongly embraced by the counterculture movements that arose due to government, and no trust in the government, such as the African American community, the Hispanic community, the gay community, all embraced disco as a
release, you would say? Maybe like a different...
And a paradox, sort of, to the white male government rock and roll stereotype. Disco was the outlet, the opposite. It was the breakaway. It was something that had never been seen before, and the counterculture loved it. Now, in the song, lines such as, I've been kicked around since I was born, or it's alright, it's okay, or we can try to understand the New York Times effect on a man, all signify the attempt to, quote unquote, stay alive or survive in the world that the counterculture view as corrupt or very suspicious. The counterculture that disco embraced sought to embrace all peoples, and that can be seen in the line, whether you're a brother or whether you're a mother, you're staying alive, you're staying alive. It really was open to all types of people to bring them in as part of the movement. Events that caused public distrust of the government are what really such as the Watergate scandal with Nixon and the Pentagon Papers, which showed that the U.S. government had lied about the real outcome of the Vietnam War. Those are the real origin of disco. That's what disco stemmed from, as a counterculture to that. And lines in the song of Staying Alive, such as the New York Times effect on a man, really signifying how the white man's effect, the government's effect, and popular culture's effect on the people and how they're staying alive. Now, I think you will recall the Kent and Jackson State shootings, where students were protesting the Vietnam War. So the counterculture had already begun, and the shootings occurred, and this fueled the disco movement even more, and this counterculture even more, as suspicion rose even more, as 4 people died in the Kent State shootings. It was tragic, and we should take a moment of silence.
Now, Ron, I don't know if you knew this or not, but this is one giant time machine that you're in, and we're actually in the year 2015. So, from looking around, how's American society changed?
That's a lot to take. 35 years I just took it in that one deep inhale.
Yes, you did.
Yes. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Glad you enjoyed the trip.
Well, what was the question?
How has American society changed?
Well, I would say that every society has a counterculture in a democracy. Today it can be seen maybe in the rap scene with NWA's song, "We Don't Like the Police." Juicy J also has some songs. But no counterculture was as big as the 70s counterculture. It was really embraced by a mass amount of people in the 70s due to major suspicion towards the government. Maybe in today's society it can also be seen with the riots in Ferguson, also against the police.
Don't forget Baltimore.
Who's that?
Baltimore. I'm just trying to bring up different riots between black people.
Who's that?
Baltimore riots.
Lord Baltimore?
No, the Baltimore riots.
Oh.
I was gonna say, don't forget they smoke copious amounts of weed.
Hey!
You're still... Veronica, you're topless.
True.
Let's go.
I'm Veronica Corningstone, and I don't have a shirt on.